If you're sitting comfortably, let me tell you a story. The story of Go+Grow starts way back. By 2012, we had been trying to find a new site to relocate our church for 10 years. And at that point, our PCC, our church council, said this cannot go on forever. And so they gave us the year of 2012 to find either a site to relocate to, or to at least have sight of where we were going. And so it became known as the year of sight or sight. We spent most of that year negotiating on the Furnitureland site up on the high road. But we came to November and it all fell through at the last minute. And so by the end of the year, we had neither a site or sight. I called the church to a week of prayer and fasting in January 2013, just to cry out to God as to what to do. The week immediately before that week of prayer and fasting, Richard Greaves, our surveyor who's been helping us with looking for a site, rang me up and told me about a building on the high road that he thought might be possible to convert. Somehow I got the impression that this was coming on the market. I went to look at it. The moment I saw it, my heart started to race, and I thought, could this be it? Could this be the place that God is calling us to? We went into the week of prayer and fasting. We had about 20 prayer meetings, culminating on the Saturday night in a main prayer meeting here in the church. And during that time, we had a time of waiting on the Lord for words and pictures about the project. And then the words started to come. We're going to be a beacon shining in the darkness. We're going to be a blazing light on the high road, and it's about the building. We're going to be like the Olympic torch, made up of many flames all coming together, attracting people from the nations. We're going to be like a star shining out. We're going to be a brilliant light, like a lamp set on a stand. At this point, I could contain myself no longer, because I had told no one about the possible property that I'd been looking at. Only Richard and I knew about it. And of course, that property was called Solar House. And now I was getting all these words about blazing lights and stars. The following week, Richard rang me back, and he said that I had misunderstood him and that the property wasn't coming on the market. And so for just the 1 week of that prayer and fasting, I was under the misapprehension that this property could come available for us. So we took this as possibly a word from the Lord. And we set about looking at a solar house as a real prospect. We commissioned a sort of architectural feasibility study where we had 2 architects present on where the solar house could be converted into a church. Frankly, I was skeptical, and the first architect confirmed my fears that this building was an office block and really was unsuitable for converting into a church. But the second architect, who presented in the afternoon, came up with a scheme that showed that it was not only possible, it was absolutely brilliant. And that sketch scheme that they drew up that day still forms the basis of what we are planning to do. Over the next 9 months, we did principally 3 things. The first was we persuaded the diocese to front fund the project. The acquisition of Solar House was going to cost millions of pounds, which we simply didn't have. The diocese had never done anything on this scale for a single parish before, and so we were in completely uncharted waters, and yet they agreed to go ahead. Secondly, we had to move the parish boundaries, because this property that we were pursuing wasn't on the market, we didn't own it, and it wasn't even in our parish. Moving parish boundaries is not as easy as it sounds. In the Church of England, parish boundaries are virtually sacrosanct. They never move. And yet, in this instance, it went through without a single objection. Thirdly, we had to ask the church commissioners if what we were proposing to do was even in principle appropriate. Because after all, it's not a run-of-the-mill strategy for churches to sell off Edwardian churches and move to office blocks. It took 9 months to get through those 3 things. But 5 days before we got the final go-ahead, out of the blue, Solar House came on the market asking for offers within 2 weeks. Miraculously, we found ourselves in a position where we could make an offer. After a period of negotiation, our best offer was turned down and they agreed a sale to another developer. We were devastated. We didn't know what to do. Had we got this wrong? Had we misheard God? At that time, I remember that God spoke to us through 2 Chronicles 20, verse 12, where it says, "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." A few weeks later, we heard that the high bidder had pulled out. The property was offered back to us, and a sale was agreed. We now had to start raising money, which up to that point I frankly hadn't given a thought to. In the 7 weeks of 2014 through the autumn, we raised £1.5 million in pledges from the membership of St. Barnabas. Now that was almost a year ago now, and since then we've been frantically working up details. We've drawn up a detailed plan of what we're proposing. We've costed that plan accurately, and we've factored in all sorts of contingencies. Through this, we have faced enormous hurdles. Questions have been raised about VAT, about the floor structure, about the auditorium design, about disabled access and toilets, about how to fit out the kitchen, about the size and position of the new stairs and lift, and about how to raise the finances. We've had to trim the project of unnecessary luxuries to stop the costs escalating. We've had to change strategy on whether to mortgage the north wing or to sell off the north wing. And because the north wing is superfluous to our needs, we've decided to go for the latter. And we've had to work out a way of phasing the project, both so that it can be delivered in a reasonable timescale and to make it affordable. The whole project has proved to be more demanding and more expensive than we imagined at first. There have been many miracles along the way, some of which I can't tell you about because they're still subject to negotiations that are ongoing. But we're now at the point of being able to submit our planning applications on both this site in Holden Road and on Solar House, and that will go forward to the planners in the next month or so. This week, we have passed a watershed moment in the project where we have demonstrated that we can proceed with phase 1. So the project that so long has been on a knife edge as to whether it would go ahead or not is now going ahead. We are moving to Solar House, save a disaster. But please do not think that we have made it, that because the project is going ahead, we can sit back and relax. We still have a long way to go. The way we have proved our financial viability has been principally through increased bids on the things that we are selling and through generous loans. But loans have to be paid back. And we now need to fundraise to make sure that we have all the funds in place. Perhaps this watershed moment is a little bit like the D-Day Normandy landings, that were a watershed moment of the war. And yet, having formed a beachhead, the Allied armies still had to battle their way to win the war. And we have many fights still ahead of us. We need to raise another £1 million in the next month or so that we can be assured of being able to fully fund phase 1. So this is a challenge, and we invite you to pray about how you can participate in that great project.